A single flight, that's all it took. A man boards a plane on an ordinary Tuesday morning, coffee in hand, mind full of deadlines and meetings. He is 3 minutes late. The gate agent, without even looking up, tells him the door has already closed. He argues. He pleads. He watches through the glass as the aircraft pushes back from the gate and disappears down the runway. He is furious. He calls it the worst luck of his life. 2 hours later, his phone lights up with a news alert. That flight never landed. He sits down on the airport floor, his legs suddenly unable to hold him. And for the first time in years, he begins to cry, not from grief, but from something deeper, something he cannot yet name. Was that a coincidence, a stroke of luck? Or was it something else entirely, a whisper from the unseen? A hand that moved 3 minutes of his life, just enough to save it. This is not a story about luck. This is a story about signs ayat and about a being who does not leave his creation to wander blindly through life without reminders of his presence. Every single day, in ways we rarely notice, Allah speaks to us, not with a voice we can hear with our ears, but with moments, with patterns, with mercies disguised as inconveniences, and with warnings disguised as blessings. And the question this documentary asks, the question that will follow you long after this video ends, is simple and terrifying at the same time. How many signs have already passed you by? How many times has Allah tapped you on the shoulder and you brushed it off as coincidence? Stay with this, because by the end, you will never look at a delayed flight, a strange dream, a sudden illness, or a chance meeting the same way again. The language Allah speaks there is a word in the Quran that appears again and again, echoing through its pages like a heartbeat, ayah sign. The plural is ayat. It is the same word used for the verses of the Quran itself. Every verse of the Quran is called an ayah because it is a sign. And the universe itself, in the eyes of a believer, is nothing less than a second Quran unwritten, but recited constantly through sunrise and sunset, through birth and death, through health and sickness, through calm seas and violent storms. Allah says in Surah Fussilat, "We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth." Surah Fussilat 41 to 53. Sit with that verse for a moment. Allah is not simply saying that signs exist. He is making a promise that He will show them, not that they might appear, not that they could be found if you search hard enough. He says, we will show them. This means that the signs are not hidden behind some locked door that only scholars and mystics can open. They are placed deliberately in the paths of ordinary people, in the horizon you glance at during your commute, and in your own soul, in the beating of your own heart, in the thoughts that cross your mind at 3 inches the morning when the world is silent and you are, for once, truly alone with yourself. 2 directions. The horizons meaning everything outside of you, the vast created world, the mountains, the oceans, the stars, and within themselves meaning your own body, your own story, your own private struggles that no one else on earth fully understands. Allah is saying that wherever you look, whether outward or inward, He has placed evidence of Himself, evidence of His mercy, evidence of His power, evidence that you are not here by accident. And yet here is the tragedy. How many of us pass an entire day wrapped inside a body that is itself a walking miracle, standing beneath a sky that is itself a canvas of divine art, and we notice none of it. We scroll past sunsets. We complain about rain, that waters fields we will never see, fields that feed mouths we will never meet. We curse traffic that may have delayed us from a disaster we cannot imagine. We are surrounded by whispers of the divine, and most of us walk through life deaf to them, but not everyone. The man who saw what others missed, let your mind travel back nearly 14 centuries to the burning sands of Arabia, to a city called Makkah, where a young man named Omar ibn al-Khattab walked with rage in his heart and a sword strapped to his side. Omar was not a soft man. He was known across Makkah for his strength, his temper, and his fierce loyalty to the old gods of his forefathers. When he heard that his own sister, Fatima and her husband had secretly accepted the message of a man named Muhammad. Find twine signed something inside him snapped. He marched to their home, his fury boiling, determined to end what he saw as a betrayal of everything his family stood for. A speedy soul. When he arrived, he heard the soft sound of recitation coming from inside verses being read quietly, verses of a book unlike anything the Arabs had ever heard. In his anger, he burst through the door. His sister, startled, quickly hid the parchment, but Umar had already struck his own sister in a moment of blind rage. And then, seeing the blood on her face, seeing her tears, something inside this hardened man cracked open. He asked, almost ashamed now, to see what they had been reading. They handed him the parchment, containing verses from Surah Taha, and Umar, this man who had come to silence the Quran with violence, began to read. Taha, we have not sent down to you the Quran that you be distressed, but only as a reminder for those who fear Allah. Surah Taha 20-1-3. Something about those words did not feel like the poetry of men. It carried a weight, a majesty, an authority that struck straight into his chest. His hands, moments ago, clenched around the hilt of a sword, meant to silence this message forever, now trembled as they held the very words he had sworn to destroy. He read on verse after verse, and by the time he reached the end of the page, the man who walked into that house was no longer the man who walked out. Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the fiercest enemies of Islam, went straight to the Prophet twine and declared his faith becoming in time. One of the greatest leaders this Ummah would ever know. What happened in that room? A sign was placed directly in front of Umar's eyes, and unlike so many of us, he did not walk past it. He stopped, he read, he reflected, and it changed the entire trajectory, not just of his life, but of human history. This is the first lesson buried in the story of signs. A sign is only powerful if it is received. Allah placed the same Quran, the same message, in front of countless people in Makkah. Many heard the same verses Umar heard and simply shrugged and returned to their lives. The difference was not in the sign. The difference was in the heart that encountered it. And this raises the uncomfortable question. This documentary keeps circling back to how many Umar moments have already happened in your life moments, when Allah placed something directly in front of you, and you, too distracted, too busy, too hardened, simply walked past it. Signs written into your own body. Let's turn inward now, because Allah did not only say He would show us signs in the horizons. He said He would show us signs within ourselves. Look at your hand right now. Curl your fingers. Notice how effortlessly the tendons pull, how the nerves fire signals faster than any computer on earth could calculate, how blood rushes through microscopic vessels to keep every cell alive without you ever once consciously commanding it. You did not design this. You did not build this. You were given this. Allah says in Surah Adh Dariyat, and on the earth are signs for the certain in faith. And in yourselves then will you not see Surah Adh Dariyat 51-20-21. Notice the phrase, for the certain in faith. This is not addressed to everyone equally. It is addressed to those whose hearts are prepared to receive certainty. Al-Muqinun. The signs are there for everyone, but they are truly seen only by those whose hearts are searching, whose hearts are humble enough to be moved. Think about your own heartbeat. It has not stopped, not for a single second, since before you were even born, beating in the darkness of your mother's womb, before you ever took a breath of air. It will beat roughly 100,000 times today. It has beaten over 1 billion times in an average lifetime, without you ever once having to remind it to continue. Who is sustaining that rhythm while you sleep, while you argue with a sibling, while you scroll through your phone completely unaware of the miracle keeping you alive? This is the sign within yourself, not a distant abstraction, not something in a textbook. It is inside your chest right now as you listen to these words. And it is not only in the workings of the body, it is in the story of your life. Think of the people you almost married, but didn't. Think of the jobs you almost took, but something held you back. Think of the illness that terrified you for months, only to reveal later a lesson you desperately needed to learn. Think of the friend who drifted away right before they would have led you down a path of ruin. These too are ayat signs written not in ink, but in the unfolding of your own days. The sign that feels like a curse. Now we must speak about the hardest kind of sign, to accept the sign that arrives wearing the mask of tragedy. There is a man in the Quran whose story has comforted broken hearts for over 1,000 years. His name is Ayub, known to many as Job. He was a prophet of Allah, blessed with wealth, health, children, and status. And then, in a matter of what felt like moments, it was all stripped away. His wealth vanished. His children passed away. His body was afflicted with a disease so severe that even those closest to him began to distance themselves from him, unable to bear the sight of his suffering. Imagine that scene. A man once surrounded by loved ones and comfort, now lying in near total isolation, his body wasting away, abandoned by all but the most loyal of companions, his wife, who remained steadfastly by his side through it all. And what did Ayub do? He did not curse his Lord, he did not scream in defiance at the heavens. Instead, the Quran records his prayer, one of the most tender and humble supplications ever spoken by a human being, and mentioned Job, when he called to his Lord, "Indeed, adversity has touched me, and you are the most merciful of the merciful." Surah Al-Anbiya 21-83. Notice something profound in this dua. Ayub does not even ask directly to be healed. He simply states his condition honestly before Allah and then affirms Allah's mercy. There is no bitterness in his words, only surrender wrapped in trust. And Allah's response came swiftly. So we responded to him and removed what afflicted him of adversity, and we gave him back his family and the like thereof, with them, as mercy from us and a reminder for the worshippers. Surah Al-Anbiya 21-84, a reminder for the worshippers. That phrase is not accidental. Ayub's suffering was never wasted. It became a permanent sign in the Quran, teaching every generation after him that hardship, no matter how severe, no matter how prolonged, is never a sign of Allah's abandonment. It can in fact be the very opposite, a sign of His closeness, His testing of those He loves most, and His preparation of a mercy so vast it will make the pain of yesterday feel small by comparison. If you are watching this right now in the middle of your own version of Ayub's trial, a diagnosis you didn't expect, a marriage falling apart, a child who has drifted from faith, a financial collapse that terrifies you at night, pause here. Breathe. This trial you are in is not necessarily a punishment. It may very well be a sign, wrapped in pain, meant to draw you closer to the one who never once left Ayub's side, even in his darkest years. What does this mean for us today? It means that when hardship strikes, our first instinct should not be, "Why me?" but rather, "What is Allah trying to show me?" Sometimes the sign is a call to patience. Sometimes it is a call to repentance. Sometimes it is simply a call to remember that this world was never meant to be paradise, and that the true test of faith is not the absence of pain, but the presence of trust in the midst of it. When the sign is ignored, the warning of Tamad, not every sign is met with the response of a Omar or the patience of an Ayub. Some are met with mockery, and history remembers in vivid and sobering detail what happens when that occurs. Travel now to the rocky valleys of Al-Hijr, the ancient homeland of the people of Thamud. They were master builders, a people who carved magnificent homes directly into towering cliffs of stone structures, so advanced that even today their remains stand in what is now northern Saudi Arabia, a UNESCO World Heritage Site called Mada-in Salih, a name that itself carries the echo of the prophet sent to warn them. Salih, a prophet from among their own people, called them to worship Allah alone and to abandon the idols they had inherited from their forefathers. They mocked him, they demanded proof, a sign so undeniable that they could not possibly deny his message. And Allah, in His infinite wisdom, granted their demand. A she-camel emerged from a rock, a miraculous creature unlike any other, sent as a direct sign from Allah. Salih warned them clearly, "And O my people, this is the she-camel of Allah for you, a sign. So leave her to eat within Allah's land, and do not touch her with harm, or you will be taken by an impending punishment. Surah Hud 11-64. The sign could not have been clearer. It was not hidden in a book. It was not a subtle feeling in the heart. It was walking, breathing evidence, standing directly in front of them. And yet, despite the clarity, despite the miracle standing before their very eyes, a group among them conspired, and one man remembered in history as one of the most wretched individuals ever born, struck the she-camel down, killing her in cold defiance. The result was catastrophic. Within days, a terrifying cry, a violent seismic tremor, shook the very ground beneath them, and the people of Thamud were wiped from the earth, their grand homes carved into the mountains, becoming nothing more than silent tombs. So the shriek seized them in the morning, and we made the land of the wicked as if it had never flourished. Thus, away with Thamud. Surah Hud 11-67-68. There is something chilling about the phrase, as if it had never flourished. A civilization so advanced, so proud of its architectural achievements, erased so completely that Allah describes it as though it never existed at all. Why does this matter to us, sitting comfortably in the 21st century, far removed from ancient Arabia? Because the pattern of Thamud did not die with Thamud. Every single day, signs are placed in front of human beings, signs of mortality, signs of moral consequence, signs of divine mercy, calling them back, and every single day, those signs are mocked, dismissed, or simply ignored in the rush of modern life. The sign today does not need to be a miraculous she-camel. It could be the friend who died suddenly at 32 years old, and instead of reflecting on our own mortality, we simply post a tribute online and return to our routines within a week. It could be the moment of clarity that strikes during a sermon at the mosque, only to fade the second we check our phones in the parking lot. It could be a chronic sin we know is destroying our hearts, a sin Allah has warned us about through guilt, through restlessness, through a hardness that grows in our chests, and still, like the people of Thamud, we press forward, striking down the warning rather than heeding it. This is one of the great tragedies of the human condition. Signs surround us, but familiarity breeds blindness. The very abundance of Allah's mercy, the sun that rises every single morning without fail, the breath that fills our lungs without our conscious effort, the rain that falls season after season, can paradoxically make us take it all for granted, precisely because it is so constant. Allah warns of this exact spiritual disease in Surah Yusuf, and most of them believe not in Allah, except while they associate others with Him. Surah Yusuf 12-106. Many commentators explain that this verse refers not necessarily to outright idol worship, but to a subtler form of association believing in Allah's existence, intellectually, while attributing the events of one's life to luck, coincidence, fate in some vague impersonal sense, or human effort alone, rather than recognizing the deliberate hand of a merciful, all-knowing Creator behind every single occurrence. The story of the cave, when sincerity becomes the key, there is a narration, authentically recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. That offers one of the most beautiful illustrations in the entire Islamic tradition of how Allah responds to sincerity in moments of desperation, how a sign of mercy can emerge from the depths of what feels like certain death. 3 men traveling together sought shelter one night in a cave along their path. As they settled inside, a massive boulder came crashing down from above, sealing the entrance completely. There was no way out, no tools to move the stone, no one nearby to hear their cries. They were trapped in absolute darkness, facing what seemed like a slow and certain death. In their desperation, one of them proposed something remarkable. Let each of us call upon Allah by mentioning the most sincere deed he has ever done, purely for Allah's sake, and ask Him to save us through it. The first man spoke of how he had elderly parents whom he cared for above all else, even above his own wife and children, never once serving anyone milk before serving his parents first. Even when it meant walking for hours in the darkness of night to find them, never waking them from their sleep, choosing instead to stand for hours holding their cup, waiting patiently for them to wake. He asked Allah if this deed had been done sincerely for His sake alone, to relieve their distress. The narration tells us that the rock moved slightly, revealing a small crack of light, though not enough for them to escape. The second man then spoke of a time he had deeply loved a woman, his own cousin, more than he had ever loved anyone. When circumstances of hardship brought her to him seeking help, he offered to assist her only if she would submit to his desires. Fearing Allah at the very moment of temptation, she pleaded with him to fear Allah instead. And in that critical moment, he withdrew completely, leaving behind the gold he had offered her, walking away purely out of fear of his Lord. He, too, asked Allah if this had been sincere, to relieve their distress. The rock shifted further. The third man spoke of hired workers he had employed, one of whom left before collecting his wage. The man had invested that unclaimed wage wisely over the years, until it multiplied into a substantial fortune of livestock and property. Years later, the worker returned, and rather than giving him only the original wage owed, the man gave him the entire fortune that had grown from it, refusing to keep even a fraction that was not rightfully his. He too asked Allah if this had been sincere to grant them relief. And the rock moved completely away, and the three men walked out of the cave free. This hadith is not simply a story of miraculous escape. It is a profound lesson about the nature of signs and sincerity intertwined. These men were trapped in what felt like the darkest, most hopeless moment of their lives, a moment with no human solution whatsoever. And in that darkness, they turned not to panic, not to despair, but to reflection upon the sincere deeds they had done purely for Allah's sake, deeds hidden from the eyes of the world, known only to their own hearts and to their Lord. What does this mean for us today? It teaches us that when we find ourselves trapped, whether in a literal crisis or in the metaphorical caves of depression, debt, illness, or broken relationships, our sincerity in private moments becomes a key that Allah honors even in our darkest hour. It is a sign that Allah sees what no human eye witnesses, and He rewards what the world never applauds. It also teaches us something about how signs operate. The rock did not move all at once. It moved gradually in response to sincere reflection and sincere dua, piece by piece, until the way was finally clear. Sometimes the signs in our own lives work exactly this way, not as sudden dramatic miracles, but as gradual openings, small mercies, stacking upon small mercies, until one day we look back and realize the entire boulder that once sealed our path has quietly rolled away. The sign in the rhythm of sleep. Let us now turn to something every single person watching this experiences nearly every single day of their lives, yet almost never reflects upon: sleep. Allah describes sleep in the Quran using the very same word used for death. It is Allah who takes the souls at the time of their death, and those that do not die He takes during their sleep. Then He keeps those for which He has decreed death, and releases the others for a specified term. Surah Azu the 3rd of March 942. Every single night, without exception, you willingly surrender consciousness. Your awareness of the world disappears entirely. You do not know, with absolute certainty, that you will wake up. This is not meant to frighten you into anxiety, but to awaken you to a sign so constant that it has become invisible. Sleep is a rehearsal for death. It is Allah demonstrating night after night His complete authority over your very soul, gently taking it and, out of pure mercy, returning it to you each morning. There is a hadith recorded by Imam al-Bukhari in which the Prophet taught a supplication to be recited before sleeping: Bismika Allahumma amutu wa haya, in your name, O Allah, I die and I live. And, upon waking, another dua: Alhamdulillahi, Aladiyana, Ahyana, Badama, Amatana wa Ailehin Nushur. All praise is for Allah who gave us life after having taken it from us, and unto Him is the resurrection. Consider how remarkable this is. The Prophet Twintini, in his profound wisdom, transformed the most mundane act of daily life, falling asleep and waking up, into a daily rehearsal of the greatest sign of all, the resurrection. Every single morning you open your eyes is quite literally, according to the language of the Quran itself, a small resurrection. You are practicing night after night for the day when the trumpet will be blown and every soul that has ever lived will awaken from the sleep of death into the reality of eternity. How many mis enti Mornings have you woken up in a rush, immediately reaching for your phone, immediately absorbed in the noise of the world, without a single moment of gratitude for the sign that just occurred, the sign that you were returned to life after having been, in every meaningful sense, temporarily deceased. This is the tragedy of familiarity again, because it happens every night, we assume it is nothing. But nothing about it is nothing. It is one of the clearest, most repeated, most personal signs. Allah gives to every human being, believer and disbeliever alike, and yet it passes almost entirely unnoticed. The sign hidden in a dream. There is another dimension of sleep that deserves careful attention: the world of dreams, a realm the Prophet Tifin Thauntin described as containing genuine signs from Allah. Entu Sambi. In an authentic hadith recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari, the Prophet Ttcc said, "Nothing is left of prophethood except good tidings." The companions asked, "What are good tidings?" He replied, "The true good dream." This does not mean every dream carries divine meaning. The Prophet Ttcc also taught us that dreams can come from three sources: from Allah, from one's own inner thoughts and anxieties, or from the whispers of shaitan seeking to disturb the believer. Islamic scholarship has always encouraged caution and balance in this area, warning against obsessive interpretation while also honoring the genuine tradition of true dreams as a minor form of revelation that continues after the seal of prophethood.